Hi and welcome to my channel, Emma Mentel, Health and Wellbeing Practitioner. In this short video, I'd like to just mention a few of the biggest mistakes I think people make when they're trying to attempt longer fasts. And by longer fasts, I mean anything from 24 hours, 36 hours, and longer. What I find makes a very big difference between somebody who easily gets through a longer fast and those who struggle is the preparation that happens before the fasting period. For me, some of the most important preparations have included making sure that I exclude sugars and high carbohydrate foods in the day or the days leading up to my fast, especially when I'm going to be doing a longer fast, so 36 hours and more. So I make sure that I include good quality protein, adequate protein, enough fat, and that I try to cut down a little bit on my coffee, make sure that I hydrate well. And by hydration, I mean good quality filtered clean water with added minerals. And I will mention more about the minerals that I add to my water. I also make sure that I pay attention to my sleep, that I pay attention to my nervous system, that I don't go into a fast when I'm feeling completely overwhelmed, and that I include really good quality foods overall. So on the night before I would do a longer fast, I will make sure that my meal contains free-range meat or chicken or enough eggs, maybe something like chicken livers that I cook in some butter or ghee or coconut oil, and that I then start my fast from a point of feeling really well nourished. And the difference between that and somebody, for example, who'd eaten a lot of pasta or rice or bread the day before or the night before seems to be that the preparation makes it easier, especially in the longer fasts. Another big mistake that I think people make when they are trying to do the longer fasts is that they're not drinking enough water with minerals, and the minerals would be either some added Himalayan salt, some Celtic salt, or I use a product called Bio 77, which is a mineral and electrolyte drop that I add to my water, probably 2 or 3 glasses a day, or I recommend that people add that in their jug of water and have it throughout the day. So when we add the minerals to the water, the fast seems to really just go a lot easier. There's not that fatigue, there's no muscle cramps for me, and the hunger seems to really be much more and much better under control. I also make sure that in the first day or so, until I'm in ketosis, that I perhaps add some MCT oil somewhere along the way. Some people just use water, they don't drink coffee. So I have not excluded my coffees in my longer fasts. I just haven't got to the point where I feel it's absolutely necessary for me to not be drinking the coffee. So I will have 2 coffees maybe on days in my longer fasts, and I add a little bit of cream to that, and in the day or so until I'm in ketosis, I might add a little bit of MCT oil, by a little bit, maybe like 2 teaspoons, and that gets me through the first 24 to 36 hours. And then when I feel like my body is really comfortable going into ketosis and the hunger is taken care of, I then leave out the MCT oil. So that seems to make a really big difference. I think a mistake that people make before a long fast is to perhaps limit their fat, and then the ketosis seems to maybe be a little bit more sluggish before that kicks in and takes care of that fat burning part where we are making ketones and where that provides the body and the brain with good energy. Another very helpful tool for me as part of fasting is to use apple cider vinegar. And I use an apple cider vinegar that has not been filtered and it's still got the mother in. So when I'm buying a product, I make sure that it's a cloudy apple cider vinegar with some of the mother in the product. And I dilute that with water either as a tea, or in summer when it's really hot where I live, teas are not great. It's very hot and humid in Durban, South Africa, where I reside. So I then will add some mineral water or water with ice to the apple cider vinegar, and I might have that 2 to 3 times a day, sometimes even more. It really is helpful, especially when somebody starts to feel hungry. For those who struggle after, say, 24 hours and they really would like to get to a longer fast, I do recommend that my participants on my fasting courses, all my clients, use a homemade or a store-bought bone broth and use the broth to mimic fasting. Because there's no carbohydrates essentially in the broth, it's full of minerals and goodness, and it's fat. So it doesn't spike the blood sugar, it doesn't spike the insulin, and it still supports for most people the process of ketosis. So going into the fat stores and then making the ketones to provide the energy. Another mistake that I've seen people make when they're trying to break a fast, so they've maybe fasted for 48 hours, 72 hours or longer, is that they try to go back to just normal eating straight away, and that can very often cause discomfort. It can cause some stomach cramps, some loose stools perhaps, some real discomfort. And it's no surprise because now we haven't really eaten anything to be digested for, say, 48 hours or 72 hours or longer. And I recommend that one breaks your longer fast with a bone broth. So a homemade bone broth is usually something I make if I do a longer fast of, say, 5 days. By the end of day 4 or early on in the day of day 5, I will usually start preparing my bone broth using bones from free-range chicken or free-range meat or marrow bone. And I will cook that broth really, really well using a recipe for bone broth, a very slow cooking, adding a little bit of vinegar, adding the seasoning, the onion, the garlic, all the flavors. So it's a really flavorful broth that is made. And then by the end of that day, where I decide to break my fast, I will start maybe with about a 1/3 cup of this broth. It's a really good, gentle, nourishing introduction into the digestive tract. I tolerate that really well, and it usually just tastes so delicious and it feels so good in the body. I really enjoy that. And there have been times for me when I've decided to break a longer fast where I've had 2 or 3 servings of my broth and then didn't feel really like any other food. And I might then the next day have a little bit more of that before I introduce any food. So I think that's really important, especially after the long fasts, to consider what you would like to break your fast with. If you're going to go into eating steak, maybe with some raw salad ingredients, you might really find that's causing a lot of discomfort. So try perhaps to rather use a broth. When I know that my body has felt really comfortable with the broth, I would then consider maybe having some cooked vegetables, and I have before added the vegetables, maybe some sweet potato or some mushrooms or some other vegetables to the broth to cook in the broth, and then I would have the broth with the vegetables in it, chew it really well and see how that feels. And if that feels fine, then I might have some very well cooked free-range chicken. Then my body feels more comfortable with solid food, and it usually doesn't cause any discomfort. Some of the fasting experts, like Dr. Mentel, recommends that you can also introduce some of the fermented foods after you've had some broth, something like kimchi or sauerkraut or something that is fermented. The digestion of that should be easier on the digestive tract. I'm not a big fan, unfortunately, of the fermented vegetables, so it's not something that I ever feel drawn to, even though I've really tried to include that. But you might want to try that also, adding in some of the prebiotics, and the fermented foods help with the digestive process as such as well, because it's supporting all the friendly bacteria. So these are some of my suggestions for preparing and breaking a longer fast. I hope you've really found that helpful. I will include more details in videos in the next few days, and please leave your comments and your questions below. Thank you for subscribing, thank you for watching and sharing, and I hope you're going to have a really beautiful and brilliant day.